The stars burned red with the light of dying ships. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and watched his home die. Earth was already gone, turned to ash and glass by the Zarian Empire 3 months ago. Mars Colony 7 was next, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Jake pressed his hand against the cold metal wall and felt the ship shake under enemy fire. His crew worked at their stations with the same desperate energy they had shown for 30 years of war. They all knew this was the end. The Galactic Coalition War was over, and humanity had lost. The communication officer turned to face him. Her name was Lisa Barnes, and she had served with Jake since the war began. Her dark eyes held the same pain that lived in every human survivor. "Sir, the evacuation fleets are almost ready to jump to hyperspace. They need 5 more minutes." 5 minutes. Jake looked at the tactical display and saw the massive Zarian fleet moving toward them like a wall of death. The enemy flagship was 10 times bigger than his ship. Its weapons could turn the Defiance into space dust with one shot. But if he could keep them busy for 5 minutes, maybe some humans would live to see another day. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake spoke into the ship's communication system. His voice was steady and calm, even though his heart was breaking. "We are going to ram the enemy flagship. It has been an honor to serve with all of you. Tell them we were here. Tell them humans never give up." The bridge crew looked at him with respect and sadness. They had all lost families, friends, and entire worlds to this war. Now they would lose their lives too. But they would make it count. Lisa Barnes stood up from her station. "Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted." "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve under your command," she said. The other officers nodded their agreement. Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. "The honor was mine. Now let's show these aliens what humans are made of." The Defiance turned toward the enemy flagship and pushed its engines to maximum power. The ship groaned and shook as it accelerated beyond its safe limits. Behind them, the last human evacuation fleet prepared to escape to the outer colonies. The Zarian flagship tried to turn away, but it was too big and slow. Jake could see the alien crew through the transparent sections of their bridge. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms and black eyes. They had conquered a dozen species before humans, and they thought humans would be easy prey. They were wrong. The collision alarm rang through the ship. Jake grabbed onto his chair and watched the enemy ship grow larger in the main screen. The Zarian weapons fired desperately, tearing holes in the Defiance's hull. Atmosphere rushed out into space, carrying the bodies of his crew with it, but they were too close now. Nothing could stop them. The USS Defiance struck the Zarian flagship at full speed. The impact sent shockwaves through both ships. The human vessel crushed through the alien armor like a spear through paper. Explosions bloomed between the twisted metal as fuel lines ruptured and power cores overloaded. Jake felt the bridge collapse around him. The last thing he saw was the evacuation fleet jumping to hyperspace, carrying the final remnants of humanity to safety. The explosion lit up the star system like a second sun. Commander Lisa Barnes had not been on the Defiance when it made its final charge. She had been transferred to a small strike team 3 days before the battle. Their mission was to establish a hidden base on Kepler 442b, a dead mining world that the Zarians had ignored during their conquest. She stood in the ruins of the mining station and watched the distant flash of the Defiance's death through her helmet visor. Her small team of 12 soldiers worked to set up equipment in the abandoned tunnels. They had enough supplies to last 6 months, maybe longer if they were careful. The plan was simple: hide until the Zarian forces moved on to other targets, then begin hitting their supply lines. It was a long shot, but it was all they had left. For 2 weeks, everything went according to plan. They established a communication center deep in the mining tunnels. They set up living quarters and a small medical bay. They even managed to intercept some Zarian transmissions and learned that the enemy was having trouble with other resistance groups in distant star systems. Then everything went wrong. Lisa was checking the perimeter sensors when she saw them. Zarian drop ships, dozens of them, landing around the mining station. The aliens had found their base. She ran back to the command center where her team was already grabbing weapons and preparing for battle. Sergeant Pete Williams, her second in command, was coordinating their defense. They have us surrounded, Commander. 300 ground troops, maybe more. Lisa looked at her 12 soldiers. They were good people, brave people, but they were outnumbered 25-1. Still, they had prepared for this moment. The tunnels were rigged with explosives. They could make the enemy pay for every meter of ground. You all know what to do, she said. Make them remember that humans were here. The battle began when the Xerians breached the main entrance. Lisa's team had set up defensive positions in the tunnels, using the narrow passages to limit the enemy's numerical advantage. For 3 hours, they held their ground. They killed dozens of Xerian soldiers and forced the rest to advance slowly through the maze of mining shafts, but ammunition runs out, and even the bravest soldiers can only fight for so long. One by one, Lisa watched her team fall. Pete Williams died holding a choke point that saved the rest of them 20 precious minutes. Private Amy Johnson used her last grenade to collapse a tunnel and bury a squad of enemy troops. Dr. Carl Martinez fought to the end with a mining laser trying to protect the wounded Dot in the final moments. Lisa found herself alone in the deepest part of the mine complex. The sounds of battle had stopped. She could hear Xerian voices echoing through the tunnels as they searched for survivors. She activated her emergency beacon and crawled deeper into the darkness. Her left arm was broken and she had taken a plasma burn across her ribs. The medical supplies she carried would keep her alive for a while, but not forever. Lisa Barnes, commander of the human resistance, crawled through the black tunnels and listened to her beacon send its hopeless signal into the void. No human ships remained to answer her call. She was alone on a dead world, the last of her kind, but she was still alive, and as long as she drew breath, humanity had not truly died. 3 months passed in the darkness of the mine tunnels. Lisa Barnes had learned to live like an animal, drinking from underground streams and eating the strange fungi that grew on the tunnel walls. Her broken arm had healed crooked, but it still worked. The plasma burn across her ribs had left an ugly scar, but she was alive. She had made a home in the deepest part of the mine complex, where the Xerian soldiers never came. The tunnel was so narrow that only a human could fit through the entrance. Inside, she had carved out a small cave where she kept her few remaining supplies and the communication equipment she had salvaged from the battle. Every day, Lisa listened to Xerian radio transmissions. She had learned their language during her years in intelligence work, and now those skills kept her informed about the outside world. What she learned broke her heart a little more each day. Humanity was declared extinct. The Xerian Empire had finished glassing the human colonies. Earth's moon had been strip-mined for resources. The great human cities that had reached for the stars were now just names in history books that no human would ever read again. But Lisa kept listening, and she kept hoping. Somewhere in the galaxy there might be other survivors. Small groups of humans hiding on forgotten worlds, waiting for a chance to fight back. Her beacon continued to broadcast its signal, though she had long since stopped believing anyone would answer on this particular morning. Lisa heard something different in the Xerian communications. A patrol unit was coming to check the mining station. They did this every few weeks, making sure no resistance fighters had moved into the abandoned facility. Usually, they just flew overhead and left. This time was different. Lisa heard the dropships landing and felt the vibrations through the rock. She grabbed her rifle and moved to one of her hidden observation points. Through a crack in the tunnel wall, she could see Xerian soldiers moving through the ruins of her old base. These were not the regular patrol troops she had seen before. These soldiers wore heavier armor and carried advanced scanning equipment. They were looking for something specific. One of the aliens stopped near the entrance to her tunnel system. He held up a device that beeped softly, then spoke into his communicator. Lisa could not hear the words, but she understood the tone. They had found traces of her presence. The soldiers began setting up heavy excavation equipment. They were going to blast open the tunnels and search every inch of the mine complex. Lisa realized with cold certainty that her hiding place would not protect her much longer. She crawled back through the narrow passages to her cave and began packing her essential supplies. If they were coming for her, she would make them work. For it, the deeper tunnels were a maze that even she had not fully explored. Maybe she could lose them in the darkness. The blasting began that afternoon. Each explosion shook dust from the ceiling and made Lisa's ears ring. The Xerians were methodically opening every blocked passage and sealed chamber. They had plenty of time and no shortage of explosives. Lisa moved deeper into the mine, following passages that became narrower and more treacherous with each turn. She could hear the alien voices getting closer, their heavy boots echoing through. The tunnels behind her. Then the mountain decided to fight back, one of the Xerian. Explosions hit a weak point in the rock structure. The blast triggered a massive cave-in that sent tons of stone crashing down through multiple levels of the mine. The sound was like thunder that went on forever. When the dust settled, Lisa found herself in complete darkness. Her helmet light showed that the passage behind her was completely blocked. She was cut off from the surface, trapped in the deepest part of the mine complex. But she was not alone. Lisa heard something moving in the darkness ahead of her. Something that breathed with a wet, raspy sound. Something that whimpered in pain. She raised her rifle and activated her helmet's bright search beam. The light revealed a figure lying against the tunnel wall about 20 meters away. It was a Xerian soldier, but something was wrong with him. He was smaller than the others she had seen, and his armor was cracked and twisted. The alien looked up at her light and made a sound that was unmistakably a cry of fear. He tried to move away from her, but his legs would not work properly. Green blood leaked from cracks in his armor, and his breathing was labored and painful. Lisa kept her rifle pointed at him and moved closer. This Xerian was young, barely past adolescence by the look of his features. His forearms were thin and delicate compared to the battle-hardened soldiers she had fought before. This was just a child who had been caught in the wrong place when the tunnel collapsed. The young alien said something in his own language, then switched to broken human speech. "Please," he whispered, his voice high and frightened. "Help me, I am hurt bad." Lisa stared at him in amazement. She had never heard a Xerian speak human words before. The enemy soldiers she had fought were silent killers who showed no mercy and asked for none, but this one was different. This one was asking her for help. "You speak my language," she said, keeping her weapon ready. The alien nodded weakly. "I learn in school, study human words for intelligence work. Never think I would need them like this." "What is your name?" Lisa asked. "My designation is ZYX7741, he replied. "But my family calls me Zix. What is your name, human?" Lisa hesitated. This could be a trick, some kind of Xerian trap. But looking at this injured child, she could not bring herself to believe he was dangerous. "Lisa Barnes?" "Lisa," Zix repeated carefully. "It is a nice name. Lisa, I think I'm going to die down here. The rocks hurt my insides when they fell. My unit thinks I am dead already. They will not look for me." Lisa could see that he was telling the truth. His armor's life support systems were damaged and green blood continued to seep from his injuries. Without medical attention, he would not survive another day. "Why should I help you?" Lisa asked. "Your people killed mine." "All of them." Zix closed his eyes and tears leaked from beneath his lids. "I know. I am sorry for what we did. I never wanted to be a soldier. I wanted to be a scientist, to study the stars, but the Empire made me fight." "You are just saying that because you need my help." "Maybe," Zix admitted. "But it is still true. Lisa, I have 2 little sisters at home. They are still children, younger than me. I promised them I would come back and tell them about the strange worlds I had seen. If I die here, they will never know what happened to their big brother." Lisa felt something crack inside her chest. This alien child was talking about his family, about promises to little sisters who would never see him again. It was the same kind of pain that lived inside her own heart. She lowered her rifle slightly. "What kind of medical attention do you need?" "My unit has medical equipment at their forward base," Zix said hopefully. "It is only a few kilometers from here, near the big crater." But I cannot walk, and they think I am dead? They will not come looking for me. Lisa understood what he was asking. The only way to save his life was for her to somehow reach the Zarian medical equipment and bring it back to him. It would mean leaving the relative safety of the deep tunnels and venturing into enemy territory. It would probably mean her death, but looking at this frightened alien child, Lisa found herself remembering something her grandmother had told her. Long ago, the measure of a person is not how they treat their friends, but how they treat their enemies when no one is watching. Lisa Barnes was the last human being in the known galaxy. What she did next would be the final statement of her entire species. She made her choice. Lisa moved closer to the injured alien and knelt beside him. Zix watched her with wide, frightened eyes as she examined his wounds through the cracks in his armor. She had treated enough battlefield injuries to know that he was dying slowly and painfully. "I'm going to help you," she said quietly. "But first, you need to tell me everything about your unit's position." "If you lie to me, we both die down here," Zix nodded eagerly. They made camp in the old mining supervisor's building, about 3 kilometers north of here. There are 20 soldiers, maybe 25. They have 2 medical units and a communication array. The building has 4 entrances, but the east side is damaged and they do not guard it well. Lisa pulled out her remaining medical supplies and began treating his most serious wounds. She had antibiotics that might work on Zarian biology, and bandages that would at least slow the bleeding. "How long have you been a soldier?" 2 years, Zix replied. "I was drafted when I turned 16. In Zarian society, all young people must serve in the military. But I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to study the stars and learn about other worlds." As Lisa worked on his injuries, Zix began to talk. Maybe it was the pain medication she had given him, or maybe it was the relief of having someone to talk to after hours of thinking he would die alone. But the words poured out of him like water from a broken dam. He told her about his homeworld, a place called Kepler Prime, where the sky was purple and 2 suns rose every morning. He described his family, his parents who worked in a factory, making starship components, and his 2 little sisters who collected rocks from the garden and pretended they were alien artifacts. "Myra is 8 years old," Zix said, his voice growing softer. "She wants to be an explorer when she grows up. She makes me tell her stories about all the different planets I have seen. But Lisa, the stories I tell her are not true. I make up nice things about beautiful worlds and friendly aliens. I cannot tell her about the terrible things we do in this war." Lisa finished bandaging his wounds and sat back against the tunnel wall. What terrible things? Zix was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "We do not just kill enemy soldiers, we kill everyone. Families, children, old people. The Empire says it is necessary to prevent future resistance, but I think it is just cruelty. You could have refused to participate." "No," Zix shook his head sadly. "Soldiers who refuse orders are executed. Their families are punished too. I have seen it happen. So we all follow orders and try not to think too much about what we are doing." Lisa felt a strange mixture of anger and pity. This alien child was part of the military machine that had destroyed her entire species. But he was also a victim of that same machine, forced to commit acts that clearly haunted him. "Tell me about the human colonies," she said. "What happened to them?" Zix closed his eyes as if the memory caused him physical pain. "The first attacks were against your military bases and industrial centers. Your people fought bravely, but you were outnumbered. When it became clear that humans would not surrender, the Empire decided on total extinction." "Why?" Lisa asked. "Why not just defeat us and make us surrender?" "Because humans are too dangerous to leave alive," Zix replied. "The Empire has conquered many species, but none of them fought like humans. Other species surrender when they are clearly beaten. But humans keep fighting even when there is no hope of victory. The Empire was afraid that if even a few humans survived, they would eventually find a way to strike back." Lisa thought about Captain Jake Morrison and the USS Defiance, about her team members who had died fighting impossible odds, about her own refusal to surrender even when she was the last human alive. Maybe the Zarian Empire had been right to fear her species. "I need to know about your medical equipment," she said, changing the subject. "What exactly do you need to survive?" Zix described the medical units his team carried. They were designed to treat Zarian physiology, but they could also analyze and treat injuries in other species. More importantly, they contained the specific mineral supplements that his body needed to heal from internal bleeding. "The medical kit is in a silver case about the size of your ammunition box," he explained. "It will be in the medical tent, which is the small structure behind the main building. The case has a biometric lock, but I can give you my authorization codes." Lisa memorized the codes and began planning her approach to the enemy camp. She had observed Zarian patrol patterns for months, and she knew their weaknesses. They were overconfident after their victory, and they did not expect any human resistance on this dead world. But as she prepared to leave, Zix grabbed her arm with one of his four hands. "Lisa, wait, there is something else you need to know." "What?" "My unit has long-range communication equipment. If you can access it, you might be able to contact other humans. The Empire believes all humans are dead, but there could be survivors in the outer colonies that we have not found yet." Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. The possibility of finding other human survivors had kept her going through the darkest moments of the past 3 months. "Can you give me the access codes for the communication array?" "Yes, but there is a problem. The communication tent is heavily guarded, and the equipment requires 2-person authorization to operate. You would need my biometric signature as well as the codes." Lisa understood the implication immediately. The communication equipment was her best hope of finding other humans, but she could not use it without Zix's help. And Zix could not survive the journey to the enemy camp in his current condition. "There might be another way," Zix said carefully. "The communication array has a remote access protocol. If you can retrieve a portable interface unit from the camp, I could help you contact your people from here." It was a long shot, but it was better than nothing. Lisa would have to infiltrate the enemy camp not just to steal medical supplies, but also to retrieve communication equipment. The mission had become twice as dangerous, but the potential reward had also doubled. "Why are you helping me?" Lisa asked. "Why are you telling me about things that could help humans fight back against your own people?" Zix was quiet for a long time before answering. "Because I am tired of war. Tired of killing. Tired of being afraid all the time. Maybe if there are still humans alive somewhere, they can find a way to make peace instead of just fighting forever." Lisa looked at this young alien soldier who had been raised to hate and kill humans, but who was now risking his life to help her. She thought about all the Zarian soldiers she had killed in battle, and wondered how many of them had been like Zix, how many had been children forced into a war they did not want to fight. "I will get your medical supplies," she said finally. "And I will try to get the communication equipment too. But Zix, if this is some kind of trap, if your people are waiting for me out there—" "It is not a trap," Zix said firmly. "I swear on the lives of my little sisters, this is not a trap. I just want to live long enough to see them again. And maybe, if we are very lucky, I want to help end this war so that no more children have to become soldiers." Lisa checked her weapons and equipment one final time. She had enough ammunition for a short firefight, but not enough for a sustained battle. She would have to rely on stealth and speed to get in and out of the enemy camp alive. "If I do not come back," she told Zix, "your people will eventually find your body down here. Make sure they know that a human tried to help you. Maybe it will mean something to someone." Zix nodded solemnly. "And if you do come back, maybe we can find a way to contact your people and tell them that not all Zarians are monsters. Maybe we can plant the seeds of peace in this garden of war." Lisa Barnes, the last human warrior, crawled back through the narrow tunnels toward the surface. Behind her, an alien child who should have been her enemy whispered prayers to strange gods, begging them to keep her safe. The future of 2 species might depend on what happened in the next few hours. The surface world felt strange after months in the underground darkness. Lisa emerged from a hidden tunnel entrance just as the system's twin suns were setting, casting long purple shadows across the rocky landscape. She moved carefully through the ruins of the mining complex, using cover and concealment techniques that had kept her alive through 30 years of war. The Zarian camp was exactly where Zix had said it would be. Lisa observed it from a rocky outcrop about 500 meters away, studying the guard positions and patrol patterns. The aliens had set up their base in and around the old mining supervisor's building, a sturdy concrete structure that had survived the decades since the mine was abandoned. She counted 23 Zarian soldiers. Just as Zix had predicted, they moved with the casual confidence of troops who believed they faced no threat. Their weapons were stacked carelessly, and several guards were engaged in what looked like a card game rather than watching their assigned sectors. Lisa waited until full darkness fell, then began her approach. She moved like a shadow across the broken ground, freezing whenever a guard turned in her direction, advancing only when she was certain she would not be seen. It took her 2 hours to cover the 500 meters to the edge of the camp. The damaged east wall that Zix had mentioned was her way in. A section of the concrete had collapsed during some long-ago accident, leaving a gap just large enough for a human to squeeze through. The nearest guard was 30 meters away, focused on the main approaches to the camp. Lisa slipped through the gap and found herself in what had once been the building's storage area. Ancient mining equipment cast strange shadows in the dim light that filtered through the broken walls. She could hear Zarian voices from the main rooms, but they sounded relaxed and conversational, following Zix's directions. She made her way toward the back of the building where the medical tent was located. She had to cross an open courtyard to reach it, and there was no cover except for a few pieces of debris. Lisa waited until the patrol guard turned away, then sprinted across the open space and pressed herself against the side of the medical tent. The tent was larger than she had expected, big enough to serve as a field hospital for the entire unit. Through a gap in the fabric, she could see the medical equipment Zix had described. The silver case containing the supplies he needed was sitting on a table near the center of the tent, but there was a problem. A Zarian medic was working inside the tent, updating medical records on a portable computer. Lisa would have to wait for him to leave or find a way to distract him. She decided to wait. Patience was a weapon that had served her well during her years as a resistance fighter. She settled into a comfortable position and watched the medic work. Studying his movements and habits, after 20 minutes, the medic finally finished his work and left the tent. Lisa gave him another 5 minutes to get clear, then slipped inside and grabbed the silver medical case. It was heavier than she had expected, but she could manage it. Now came the dangerous part. The communication tent was on the other side of the main building, and she would have to move through areas that were more heavily guarded. Lisa made her way back through the building's interior, avoiding the rooms where she could hear Zarian voices. She reached a window that overlooked the communication tent and studied the setup. The tent was surrounded by 3 guards, and she could see at least 2 more technicians working inside. Getting to the communication equipment would be much more difficult than stealing the medical supplies, but Zix had mentioned a portable interface unit, something that could be used to access the main communication array from a remote location. Lisa studied the tent's exterior and spotted several cables running from the main array to smaller equipment scattered around the area. One of those smaller units was sitting unguarded behind a supply crate, only 10 meters from her current position. If she could reach it without being seen, she might be able to complete her mission without alerting the entire camp. Lisa waited for the right moment, then slipped out of the building and crept toward the supply crates. The portable interface unit was about the size of a briefcase, with several cables connecting it to the main communication array. She disconnected the cables as quietly as possible and lifted the unit. That was when everything went wrong. A Zarian guard rounded the corner of the supply crate and found himself face to face with a human who was not supposed to exist. For a moment, both of them froze in surprise. Then the guard reached for his weapon and opened his mouth to shout an alarm. Lisa was faster. She dropped the communication unit and drew her sidearm in one smooth motion. Her first shot took the guard in the center of his chest, dropping him before he could make a sound. but the damage was done. Other guards had heard the weapon discharge, and voices were already calling out an alarm. Lisa grabbed the communication unit and ran for the damaged wall. Behind her, the Zarian camp exploded into activity as soldiers grabbed weapons and searched for the intruder. Spotlights blazed to life, turning the night into harsh white day. She reached the gap in the wall. Just as the first pursuit team rounded the building, plasma bolts sizzled past her head as she squeezed through the opening and rolled down the rocky slope beyond. More shots followed her, but she was moving fast and using the terrain for cover. The chase continued across the broken landscape. Lisa knew she could not outrun the Zarian soldiers in open ground, but she had advantages they lacked. She knew this area intimately after months of hiding here, and she was smaller and more agile than her pursuers. She led them on a winding path through the ruins, using her knowledge of hidden passages and unstable ground to slow them down. Several times she had to stop and return fire, using her dwindling ammunition to keep the pursuit from getting too close. Finally, after what felt like hours of running and fighting, Lisa reached the tunnel entrance that would take her back to Zix. She could hear the Zarian soldiers behind her, but they were far enough back that she had time to seal the entrance with explosives. She had prepared for just such an emergency. The blast brought down tons of rock and sealed the tunnel completely. The pursuit was over, but Lisa was now trapped in the deep tunnels with her wounded enemy. She made her way back through the narrow passages, carrying the medical case and communication unit. Her body ached from the chase and she had used most of her ammunition, but she had succeeded in both parts of her mission. Lisa found Zix where she had left him, though his condition had clearly worsened during her absence. His breathing was more labored, and the green blood seeping from his wounds had increased. She could see that he was fighting to stay conscious. "You came back," he whispered when he saw her. "I was not sure you would." "I keep my promises," Lisa replied. She opened the medical case and began setting up the Zarian healing equipment. "This is going to hurt, but it should save your life." The medical treatment took several hours. Lisa had to learn how to operate alien technology while treating injuries she did not fully understand. But the equipment was well designed, and Zix was able to guide her through the more complex procedures. As the medical units worked to repair his internal bleeding and stabilize his condition, Zix told Lisa about his life before the war. He described his home world in vivid detail, painting pictures with words of purple sunsets and crystal gardens. He talked about his parents and sisters, his dreams of becoming a scientist, and his plans for after the war ended. In return, Lisa found herself sharing memories of Earth and humanity. She told him about blue skies and green forests, about cities that reached toward the stars, and about a species that had always looked outward to the galaxy with hope and wonder. "Your people sound beautiful," Zix said as the medical treatment neared completion. "I wish we could have met as friends instead of enemies." "Maybe it is not too late for that," Lisa replied. She activated the portable communication unit and began trying to establish contact with the outer colonies. "If there are still humans out there, maybe we can find a way to make peace." The communication unit came to life with a soft hum. Lisa felt her heart racing as she began transmitting on frequencies that human colonies might be monitoring. She sent a simple message, repeated over and over. "This is Commander Lisa Barnes of the Human Resistance. Is anyone out there? Please respond." For long minutes there was nothing but static. Then, faintly, like a voice calling across an impossible distance, came a response. "Lisa Barnes, this is Colonel Ryan Murphy at New Geneva Colony. We read you." My God, we thought all the resistance fighters were dead. Lisa felt tears streaming down her face as she heard the voice of another human being for the first time in months. She was not alone. Humanity was not extinct. There was still hope. "Ryan, I have critical intelligence about Zarian military operations," she transmitted. "But more importantly, I have someone here who wants to help us end this war." She looked at Zix, who was listening to the transmission with wonder in his alien eyes. "Are you ready to talk to my people?" Zix nodded slowly. "I want to tell them about the young Zarian soldiers who are tired of fighting, about the officers who question their orders, about the possibility that not everyone in the Empire wants this war to continue forever. Lisa handed him the communication device. Then let's start building a